Hello and welcome to my guide to item level 350 crafting. The point of this guide is to show you how to craft using my personal rotation to 100% HQ the craft, and do so with absolute minimum gear requirements. That's the important part. So, what do I mean by absolutely minimum gear requirements? I mean the stats you see down here. These are the stats you need to have to be allowed to craft the item at all. I have obviously a little more than that. However, I know how much you would hit for if you had 1350 control, which means I will compensate for that, so the guide will still be accurate. Down in the description below I will have timestamps, so you can just skip the parts you do not want to watch, like for example, you do not want to hear the introduction, you do not want to hear the basics, you do not want to hear the maths behind what I'm doing, the theory craft, you just want to see the rotation. That's what the timestamps are for. So let us start with the basics. What do you need to know? What do you need to have first? Obviously, you will need to have the craftsmanship and the control at the minimum level. The food we are using is the tempura platter. You can buy this from the NPC in Kogane for like 2k gil. That's basically nothing. I can even show you where that is. It is exactly in here. This NPC here sells the tempura platter for 2k gil. We're going to use that, which means you can account for the 42 craftsmanship you're getting for this in order to reach 1500 craftsmanship. The main reason we're using this is obviously the CP, but the craftsmanship also helps. I'm going to use this here instead of the seafood stew, which is better because this is significantly cheaper, and I personally consider this something that even people with the minimum gear requirements can afford, or need to afford in any case. Food, gear, now skills, abilities. Obviously you need to have your main story quest to 70, so you unlock everything including Stroke of Genius. This ability helps. It's almost the equivalent of a good proc during crafting. It is very useful. Next, the additional abilities. These are the ones I've chosen. What you need is, you need the Carpenter at 50 for the Byrogot's Blessing. This is the hardest hitting finisher we are going to use. In Ingenuity 2, that's the Blacksmith level 50 ability. This one's also important for the finisher. Goldsmith, you actually need to 54 in order to use Maker's Mark. Now, if you have already crafted until now, you're going to be confused by this choice. Usually people always use a different ability to start the craft with. However, I'm a huge fan of Maker's Mark. In my opinion, it is better than even the initial preparations from the specialist. And the reason why we will discuss in the maths section, which is the next one. If that's what you want to hear immediately, obviously there's a timestamp down below. In order for Maker's Mark to work, you obviously need Flawless Synthesis, and Innovation is part of the finisher at the end. So these three abilities are important. From the Alchemist, Tricks of Trade, very important. Comfort Zone, vital. From the Culinarian, the Hasty Touch, 1 is unnecessary, the steady hand 2 is vital, and the reclaim will be unnecessary in 99.999% of all cases. Actually, I've never ever had a case where I actually had needed to use reclaim, but it is still a nice to have if you have the slot for it, just in case. If you use my guide, if you have the stats, then you should only ever need to use reclaim if you actually fuck up, if you press the wrong button or whatever. It's still a nice thing to have. And I have also just realized that when you're not an armorer, you will also need the piece-by-piece ability from that job for the rotation as well. These are the abilities you're going to need from the additional actions. These are the skills. Stats. I'm going to show you the craft without being a specialist, because it's largely unnecessary. I do not need Stroke of Genius to succeed. I do not need the extra stats from the Soul Crystals to succeed. Here you can see them. It gives you 20 craftsmanship, 20 control. That is not necessary. The absolute minimum is good enough. Now, the next section, and more interesting too, is the maths behind why I'm doing what I'm doing. Now, what I did in order to invent or discover, I would rather call it invent my rotation, is that I first calculated how much each ability costs. For example, the Careful Synthesis 3 costs you 10 durability to use and costs 7 CP to use. Now, in order to make this simpler for me to analyze, what I did was that I decided to translate every number into CP. For example, how much is the durability I use for this worth in CP? Now the question is, how did I do that? Well, what I did was I went through every single durability restoring action, like for example Mastersman 1, Mastersman 2, Manipulation 2, and so on. And then I calculated, well, I pay this much CP to restore this much durability, which is the most CP efficient ability to use. And the most CP efficient ability to use is Manipulation 2. You pay 96 CP for 40 durability. To make this simpler, every step cannot use less than 5 durability, which is why this is my baseline. What I did was I divided 96 by 8 because there's 8 times 5 durability that this is going to restore. If I were to calculate it using, for example, Mastersman 1, I would divide it by 6, because at 6 times 5 durability it would restore. This is just to make it simpler for myself to calculate which abilities I want to use at all. So, if you divide 96 by 8, you get 12 CP, which means for every 5 durability you pay 12 CP. This is the most efficient durability restoring ability in the game, and this is the one we're going to derive the durability cost for CP from. Now, why is this important? Well, we can break it down now. We know if you use Manipulation 2, which is the most efficient ability, every 5 durability is worth 12 CP, which means Careful Synthesis 3 costs 10 durability, which is 24 CP, 2 times 12. 24 CP plus 7 which is the CP cost of the ability itself, which means 31 CP for this ability. And you can do that for every single ability a crafter has, and thus calculate how efficient it is. Obviously, it's not always accurate. Abilities have a chance to fail, for example, like the Hasty Touch 2. Abilities, well, crafts not always have the same weight. For example, the ingredients have only 35 durability, like this one here. You run out of CP so fast because you have to use Manipulation 2 twice that you actually have more durability than you have CP ready to use it all. So CP becomes more important than the average value that I just presented you with. However, it is good enough in order to understand why I went with the abilities that I did and the order in which I used them. Now, as for moths, this ability here, the Maker's Mark, is an ability that many will not agree with, probably. Now, why did I use Maker's Mark? Why am I using this ability that apparently no one else is using, at least no one whose guides I've watched personally? Like, for example, Eshi10X from YouTube is a guy I admire. He taught me a lot about crafting with his guides. However, he never seems to use Maker's Mark, and I think the reason he doesn't do that is because he doesn't have to. It's easier, the craft is easier with Maker's Mark, but it's also significantly longer. Also, Eshi10, for example, likes to use macros, and what I'm showing you here is how to craft using absolute minimum gear requirements. That means we're not using macros, and I'm sorry for the interruptions here. So, let me demonstrate why I think that Maker's Mark is superior, objectively superior to all its alternatives, at least when it comes to just pure efficiency. Now, I'm going to craft something relatively simple. I'm going to craft something from the old patch, which is the item level 320 stuff, just to demonstrate what I mean. Now, let's for example craft a rhea cloth. This is still useful since it's an ingredient in the item level 320 crafting gear, which at this point, as of this recording, is still the best in slot gear. The rhea cloth needs some bloodhem cloth, which I'm going to craft in a second, and then I'm going to demonstrate what I mean. I'm not going to use any HQ ingredients. Oh, well, this one went HQ, but I don't need to in order to succeed here. So, the rhea cloth, which makes it especially interesting for demonstration purposes, it has the same durability and the same difficulty rating as the item level 350 stuff. For example, the Nightsteel Helm of Fending here, same difficulty, same durability. The difference is that the item level 350 gear needs significantly more quality, which is of course why you need so much better gear than in the previous patch. Now, let me show you rotation and what I mean. So, the Maker's Mark, what does it do? When I press it, it gives me the difficulty of the craft rounded up to 3600 divided by 100. So, for example, the item level 320 crafting gear has 6377 difficulty, so you would get 64 stacks of Maker's Mark. So what do I do with this? This ability here makes it so the next ability, the Flawless Synthesis, costs no CP and costs no durability to use. So, what does that mean for us? It means that for the next 30 or so steps, Comfort Zone is going to be ticking away, giving us more CP than we invested in it. The Comfort Zone itself costs 66 CP, but 10 steps times 8 CP is 80 CP. So you actually gain 14 CP more than you invested. It is almost equivalent to a proc, which you could then eat with Tricks of Trade. So a proc is, in my eyes, the equivalent of 20 CP. This one gives 14. All the while this is running, Comfort Zone is ticking away. You are getting procs, good condition procs, excellent condition procs, while you are using Flawless Synthesis. When those happen, you can Tricks of Trade them, which means you're recharging a shit ton of CP while also getting durability for basically for free. That sounds awesome. So how can we use that? I decided, well, first, in order to recharge CP, we have to use some CP. Obviously, duh. So what I'm doing here is I'm going into Comfort Zone, so it starts ticking away immediately. If I get a proc, I obviously eat it. Required has to be up immediately. Now, we have spent some CP now. We have prepared for crafting, the first steps you do in basically every single craft. However, you still have too much CP. You would go to full very quickly, and then the rest of the Flawless Synthesis would be wasted. So what are we doing here? We need to spend even more CP. What's the most efficient way of doing that right now? Well, the most efficient thing is, see, this gives you progress, which means the more you use this ability here, the less your piece by piece is going to hit for. This is going to hit for less the more progress you already have. So the earlier you use piece by piece, the better it is. So if we have to waste some CP early on, this is our choice ability. It can it can fail, which means we want to use Steady Hand 2 first. Now we're going to use piece by piece a couple times. Well, how many times? Well, it gives you a certain amount of durability once you're done. Then you get a certain amount of durability of progress from your Flawless Synthesis. Once that is done, you're going to be at a specific progress point. So you have to see how often do I have to use piece by piece so that when I am done with Flawless Synthesizing, that I am as close to done as possible without actually being done, because we haven't gone to 100% quality yet. So what does that mean? Well, it means the following. We're going to use piece by piece 3 times. Now, if we get a proc here, we're going to use Precise Touch. If you get a proc while not in Steady Hand 2, you're going to use Tricks of Trade. So 3 times piece by piece. There we go. Now, we are here at 2477 progress. This is independent of my craftsmanship rating. This was a percent. 33% of however much you're missing. So whether you have 1563 craftsmanship or 1 craftsmanship is completely irrelevant. You're going to get the same progress. The same is applicable to Flawless Synthesis. It's always 40. Your craftsmanship rating doesn't matter at all. So that is the reason why 1500 craftsmanship is identical for this rotation as like 2000 craftsmanship or 3000 craftsmanship. It does not matter. You're going to use your craftsmanship rating only once. The very last hit is going to be Careful Synthesis 3, and that one uses your craftsmanship rating. And 1500 is more than enough for my rotation for all crafts. Okay, Now, we are still in Steady Hand 2. Obviously, we don't want to waste Steady Hand 2 stacks. Every single stack, if you see here, it gives you 5 stacks at 25 cost. 25 divided by 5 is 5, which means every single stack is worth 5 CP. So if we waste those two, we basically have wasted 10 CP. We don't want that. So what are we gonna do here? Well, we're going to waste more CP by using Prudent Touch twice. I got a proc. This one I'm gonna Precise Touch. Now, we are done wasting CP. Because we're at 25 durability, we have to restore it. So I use Manipulation 2. This is gonna restore our durability until it's at 65 out of 70. If you've used Prudent Touch twice, it will be 70 out of 70. So we didn't lose any Manipulation 2 stacks. Very efficient. We are at 311 CP. You will be most likely at less. That's because I already had 2 procs during demonstration. And the Precise Touch costs 3 CP less than Prudent Touch, and I used Tricks of Trade once. So you obviously will be at less CP than I am right now, but that does not matter. This is by my calculations, at those kind of stats, for the Rhea Cloth, a single proc is enough to guarantee 100%. The difference is, item level 350 gear also needs high quality ingredients, so you start it higher. At this point, 1 proc is good enough. Now, what are we gonna do here? Well, now that we have spent all the CP we wanted, we can finally start using Flawless Synthesis. So let's do that. We're gonna use Flawless Synthesis. If you get a proc during Flawless Synthesis, we're gonna use Tricks of Trade, and we're gonna keep up Comfort Zone, because it restores more CP than you invest. And the more often you get to use Comfort Zone, the more CP obviously you have gained, which is one of the big reasons why Flawless Synthesis is so powerful. Well, Maker's Mark and Flawless Synthesis. Now we're gonna use this. And this, by the way, what I'm demonstrating right now is probably the reason why most people do not want to use Maker's Mark. It makes your crafts more tedious and longer. However, it is such an amazing, efficient ability that I am personally using it everywhere. In every single craft I can use it in, where it actually makes sense to use this thing, that's where I'm going to. Well, what do I mean by it being actually useful? Well, if the craft is difficult enough, if it is at least, let's say, item level 320 crafts, then I'm gonna use Maker's Mark. Otherwise, I don't need an ability that only works on the first step at all. And you shouldn't either at 1500 craftsmanship and 1350 control. You're not gonna use Maker's Mark for anything else but item level 320 gear and up. Now we're almost done with the Maker's Mark. So, why did I use piece by piece 3 times? Well, as you can see, I'm now at a bit less than 300 progress missing, which means a single Careful Synthesis 3 is going to finish the craft. That is the magic point that you want to reach by using piece by piece and Flawless Synthesis. 1 Careful Synthesis, 3 left to finish it. For example, other crafts like the, well, I can't demonstrate it right now, the item level 350, 35 durability ingredients, those need 1 less piece by piece because they have less progress you need to reach. Now, what's the next step? We have recharged CP, we have gotten lots of progress, we're 1 Careful Synthesis away. Now we're going to fill up the HQ bar, the quality bar. So, how are we going to do that? Well, we don't need any more durability than this, so we're not going to use Manipulation 2 anymore during this craft. Now we're going for Steady Hand 2. If you get procs during Steady Hand, you use Precise Touch. If you get it outside of Steady Hand, you use Tricks of Trade. If you already are at 11 unrequired stacks, so you don't need more, you use Prudent Touch instead and just hit for more, or if you badly need the CP, use Tricks of Trade. Now, let me demonstrate. I go Precise Touch, that gives me 2 Inner Quiet stacks. And now I'm gonna use Prudent Touch until Steady Hand runs out, or I'm at 11 stacks. Here we go. Now, Steady Hand ran out, I cast it again, use 1 more Prudent Touch. Now I'm at 11 stacks of Inner Quiet. Comfort Zone just ran out. That's a good sign. I made perfect use of Comfort Zone, and using it again would be unnecessary, because there's less than 10 steps left until we're done with this craft. Now, we have 4 stacks of Steady Hand 2, which means that is enough for the entire finisher, which is up here. Ingenuity 2, Great Strides, Innovation, Baragod's Blessing, in this order. This is important. Why in this order? Well, this Steady Hand is active for 5 steps. Ingenuity 2 is active for 5 steps. What does that mean? Well, you use Steady Hand 2, you use Ingenuity 2, and then you get a proc. Then you have enough steps on both of those left that you can just eat the proc still and then continue on with your rotation. Now, why would you need more CP if you know, well, I have enough CP to just do the finisher? Why eat the proc? Well, if you eat the proc here, then you have a bigger chance of getting another proc before you do the full finisher. The same is for Great Strides. The reason why I use Great Strides first and Innovation second is because if I would use an Innovation and then I get a proc, Great Strides is still better than a proc. Unless, obviously, it's excellent, then the math is off. However, if it's a good proc, and I use Great Strides first, then I get a proc, the proc is better than Innovation. In some cases, this has single-handedly saved the entire craft from going to like 80% HQ chance to 100%. Just because I used it in this order and I got a proc and used that one instead of the Innovation. Now let me show the finisher. Like this. Then I hit for Baragod's Blessing. It's important that you pay attention how much you hit for. This will be important. I hit for 14,000 at this much control. Obviously, this is a bigger number because I have Innovation, and it will be even bigger when you have Inner Quiet stacks. But I have almost 1,500 control, and I hit for much more than you will if you only have 1,350 control. So it's important that you pay attention to these numbers and remember them. Sometimes you will get to 11 Inner Quiet stacks and you're about to use your finisher, but then you realize, wait, I actually need at least 1 more Prudent Touch in order for the finisher to actually get me to 100%. Sometimes that might happen. So you have to pay attention to the numbers. You have to pay attention to those 2 numbers and make use of the knowledge of how much you hit for. Now, another interesting part of my finisher is that Ingenuity 2 is still up. Even if you got a proc after using Ingenuity 2, Ingenuity 2 will still be up after the finisher. This is important because the next ability, there's only 1 ability left that you're going to use, and that is Careful Synthesis 3. This ability you will use while Ingenuity 2 is up. That means you will hit, even with 1,500 craftsmanship and not a single point more, you will still hit for a massive 450 progress. Somewhere around there, even on the most difficult of crafts. That is, in my experience, always enough to finish the craft. Let me demonstrate. With 1,521 craftsmanship, I hit for 475 progress. This number will be identical to the item level 350 craft because the difficulty rating is the same. So this number is accurate, and I can make use of it later. I have now demonstrated why I use Maker's Mark, because it's very, very efficient. The math behind it, the actual math, is I took out a calculator and calculated, well, how much CP does this cost me? The Maker's Mark itself costs me 20 CP to use. How much does it give me? How much durability does it give me? How much comfort zone stacks does it give me that I wouldn't be able to use without it? And the number I came up with is that using Maker's Mark grants you an advantage of a net gain of over 100 CP. That's obviously a good number. Now, if we compare the 100 CP you gain from Maker's Mark with, for example, just as an example, with the initial preparations into, for example, Specialty Reflect, which in my opinion is the most efficient specialty action available. Specialty Reflect gives you 3 inner quiet stacks. So the 50 CP you invest here, this one grants you, if you convert everything into the CP value that I use to calculate how efficient something is, this is a net gain of a little bit over 50 CP. Maker's Mark is over 100. Maker's Mark is twice as efficient as initial preparations Specialty Reflect. Obviously, this does not account for the other abilities like Whistle While You Work or whatever. However, those abilities, I've not seen anyone ever on any guide use those abilities. So, as far as I'm concerned, this ability, which I actually saw someone use, in this case Ashy10, in his guide to the 35 difficulty, 35 durability item level 350 ingredients, he actually used this ability, and then I took out a calculator and saw that it's actually not that great for an ability. He probably only used it because he wanted his macro to be shorter, and since it was enough for him, he used that instead. Obviously, I'm mentioning Ashy10 pretty often. That's because he's my senpai. I want him to notice me and stuff. Jokes aside, this was the math behind it. I showed you my rotation. I showed you why I chose my rotation as is, and now I'm going to actually show you something serious. I'm going to show you a item level 350 craft. In this case, what could we craft that is a good example? First, I want it to be a desirable item. For example, yeah, what's really desirable? This thing here. Healer pants, which have maximum crit and death as the secondary stat. Maximum crit is really good. So I'm going to demonstrate how to craft these pants. First, in order to use my rotation efficiently, you will need high quality Louisoix or Louisoix or whatever you call it, high quality ether sand, high quality jade, high quality twin thread. If you do that and you don't get unlucky, which is a distinct possibility but it is relatively rare, then you do not need to high quality the two big ingredients, these two. I consider these big ingredients because these need are very expensive to craft. You need the Hing and Flax, which only the folklore max level gatherers can gather. And if you want a high quality too, then you probably want the high quality ingredients, which are very expensive. So if you don't have to use those high quality, that's a huge boon. You make a lot of money, you save a lot of money on not having to use high quality item level 350 ingredients. However, why do I not consider the grade 3 Louisoix to be one of those high ingredients? Well, if we go look at it, that's because it has a lot of ingredients itself that could be high quality, like the nipple wart and the ether sand, which make the craft a lot easier to high quality. Obviously, it's not because the Louisoix is cheaper, it is because it is easier to high quality. That's why I do not consider the Louisoix to be one of the difficult ingredients, unlike true linen and ground sloth leather. So now I'm going to prepare the ingredients and then we continue on. Alright, I have prepared the ingredients. If I select the necessary high quality mats, as you will see, I will reach 7865 quality. Now, I personally don't need that much quality going in. But that is because I have more control than you will have with minimum gear requirements. You're going to hit for like probably more than 1,000 less with your finisher, which means you need 1,000 more going in. I personally, for me it's already enough to go in with that much quality, but I will use 3 ether sand just to demonstrate how you would craft this item. So with minimal gear requirements, this is how you want to craft the pants. You want to have about this much quality, you want to have these abilities, and you want to have the rotation I already showed you. So let me go through the process again, step by step, with a craft that is actually worth a damn. So, let's go. Obviously, don't forget your food. You probably won't have to remember it because you don't have enough craftsmanship without it. That is actually very useful. You cannot forget your food if you have less than 1500 craftsmanship without it. Now, let us start. First, just like in the rotation I already showed you on the item level 320 craft, we start with Maker's Mark. Still a huge fan of that ability. Comfort Zone and Required. Steady Hand. Come piece by piece 3 times. Prudent Touch twice. Manipulation 2. Flawless Synthesis. Eat procs, don't forget those. Always pay attention to those. I myself and many others that I have either taught or just were my friends from the friends I have crafted with, we always have a trauma sitting at the back of our minds, letting go of tricks of procs, and then not finishing the craft because of that. So always pay attention to that. You will learn it the hard way if you don't. That's very good. With the amount of quality I went in with, I will actually myself need like 0 procs with Stroke of Genius to actually succeed, but I'm going to demonstrate the full rotation as you would do it. You would eat the procs that you get. You would not actually pass them by like I would have if I had enough, if I knew I had enough. Now we're done with phase 2. That's the flawless synthesis spam. Now, this is interesting. This is a very rare occasion where one careful synthesis 3 spam use is not good enough. The reason why this happened is because I got very lucky on the procs. I ate all of them, and I failed a couple of flawless synthesis usages, which means the next one will probably not finish. However, this is also important. This is why we are at 70 durability. We ate so much CP that we can just use prudent touches until we succeed, which means we will have enough durability left to use the Careful Synthesis 3 twice in the end. This was obviously a measure I specifically made for this case that happens once in a blue moon, but it's good that I can demonstrate it here and also say that my rotation is also robust against it. Now, what am I gonna do here? I'm going to, now that we have recharged the CP, now that we have kind of enough progress, now we're going to get the high quality chance to 100%. So, steady hand 2, and now prudent touches. If we get a proc, precise touch. So, now this is where your knowledge of how much your finisher hits for is vital. For example, if your finisher hits for, I don't know, 11k, then you will realize 11k is not actually enough to HQ this to 100%, even though I'm at 11 stacks and could do the finisher now. The finisher would not be enough. I need to prudent touch at least once or twice more in order to get enough quality. However, I know that I personally will hit for a little bit over 13,000. You, with only 1350 control, will probably hit somewhere around 12,000. So how much are we missing? We're missing a single prudent touch in order to get to a point where 12,000 would actually finish the craft. So, in this case, we don't need to prudent touch on a good proc. We do have 2 stacks of steady hand, so we're gonna eat this. We're going to use prudent touch once. And now, as you can see, a 12k hit would finish the craft to 100% high quality chance. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna do the finisher. Like this. And as I said, I hit for a little bit over 13,000, as you can see here. You will hit for about 12,000. I specifically put in more high quality mats and did an extra prudent touch just to demonstrate what you would do if your finisher only hits for 12k. Now, we have 15 durability left. I also did that intentionally because that is enough to use Careful Synthesis twice, and both of those will be under Ingenuity 2, which means both of those will hit for like almost 900, maybe actually more than 900 together. So I'm gonna use it once. It hits for 473 for me. It will hit a little bit less for you, but that is why knowledge of how much you hit for is so vitally important. So now I'm gonna finish this craft. And it is done. It will appear in your inventory, obviously. Now, this was a demonstration of how to craft durability 70, difficulty 3548 crafts that need this much quality, obviously. Now, there are 2 other examples that are important that I show you for this particular patch. The first example is the 35 durability ingredients that you might want to high quality. I stopped trying to do that. However, I just demonstrated that I'm using high quality Louisoix. I have no idea how to pronounce that. Let's just say Louisoix. I'm still using high quality Louisoix, and I'm doing it using those 3 high quality ingredients. Obviously, if you go, for example, for intelligence, you need 2 of those, like this. Now, this is a very iffy craft to do. There is no guarantee you're going to actually succeed on that, which is why you don't have to succeed in it. For example, let me show you what I mean. If you get, let's say, a batch of normal quality Louisoix, then you can say, well, I can use it normal, but I can use the same rotation to try and high quality the leather or the linen, for example, and that will substitute for the high quality Louisoix. However, the reason why I'm specifically trying to high quality Louisoix and not the others is because this is easier to high quality, because the mats in it are cheaper. So what I'm doing is I'm combining these 3 high quality mats, and that is cheaper than, say, using high quality Savnarian cotton. Now you might say, but why is that actually cheaper? Because the cotton, that's just creation tombstones, right? Well, I am an omnicrafter. I craft all day, every day. Creation mats for me are actually incredibly important, to the point where I started accepting creation mats, like the cotton here, as payment for my crafts instead of Jill. I have already, by this point, crafted over 60 item level 350 high quality items, and it's only been a week since the patch hit, which introduced those. I have crafted a lot, and the mats are very expensive for me personally, and I do not want to farm them myself. Obviously, if you farm them yourself, you can try to high quality this. However, you only get 1 true linen per craft here, and you get 3 Louisoix per craft here, and they count for just as much as the true linen. So keep that in mind. Now, with this part of the rant done, let me actually show you how to high quality this part here. So first, what we need is to be an alchemist, obviously. We need food active, 9 minutes is good enough. And now I'm going to attempt to high quality this. Now, here, as I already said, this is an iffy craft. There's no guarantee you're actually going to succeed, but you don't have to. However, with that much high quality, with this much quality going in, the likelihood is pretty decent that you're going to succeed. So, what do I mean by decent? By my personal experience, over 90% chance that you're actually going to high quality it. Obviously, if you've ever done Hasty Touch 2 spam, you know how unreliable even 90% is. So let's start. There is a little bit of a difference here to my normal rotation because you only have 35 durability. What we need to do here is, inside of the entire rotation, you need to use Manipulation 2 twice instead of once, otherwise you will run out of durability. However, that leads you to run out of CP extremely quickly, and that is why Hasty Touch 2 is on my bar at all. Here, Hasty Touch 2 saves you a lot of CP. Obviously they can fail, but it is worth the risk in this scenario. So again, we use Maker's Mark even on not only 24 stacks. We eat procs if we're not in steady hand. The rotation starts the exact same way. We go Maker's Mark, Comfort Zone, Inner Quiet. Now here we face our first dilemma. We can't just repeat the first phase of my previous rotation, because what I did was I used steady hand, and then I used piece by piece a couple times, and then prudent touch until steady hand ran out, and then I went into flawless synthesis spam with a manipulation 2. We can't do that here. We will run out of durability before steady hand runs out. So what do we need to do? We do need to use manipulation 2 already. Now, the problem is manipulation 2 stacks. It gives you 8. Each stack, as I already explained in the math section, costs 12 CP. These steady hand stacks cost only 5 CP each. So if you absolutely have to lose a stack out of one of those two, you would rather lose a steady hand 2 stack. That saves you 7 CP. So we're going to go into steady hand 2, just like in the normal rotation. And now we're going to use manipulation 2 already. We're going to waste the steady hand 2 stack for it. Now, same as before, we're going to use piece by piece. This time, however, only twice. The reason why twice is because that's enough for the flawless synthesis that are left to go to almost finished. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use Hasty Touch 2 twice. Why Hasty Touch 2 instead of Prudent Touch already? Because, let me demonstrate. This ability costs 10 durability instead of the 5 of Prudent Touch. So we're going to use it. Even if it fails, it is worth the risk. I've now used it twice, and we're at 15 durability, and manipulation 2 is going to restore 20. This is perfect for what we're trying to do here. We haven't wasted a single manipulation 2 stack. This was our objective. We have succeeded. The durability will now go to 35. So let's finish the synthesis spam. We've had 2 procs so far. There's the third one. In order to guarantee the high quality of the item, I have made the experience that I need like over 4 procs. My alchemist is not a specialist, so I got a Stroke of Genius proc. That counts for about as much as 1. So I had 3 procs I ate. I had the Stroke of Genius proc. That's already almost good enough to guarantee this item to be high quality in the end. And another thing that you need to succeed at is obviously you need to succeed at all the Hasty Touch 2s. Otherwise, you will probably not go to 100% high quality chance. So let us finish this phase of the rotation. That was good. Alright. Now here we know that the rotation will last at least another 10 steps, so Comfort Zone is useful here. Now, obviously, as you can see, 1 careful synthesis is not going to be enough, but it doesn't have to be in this case, because we still have to use manipulation 2 anyway. So if you don't want to lose a single manipulation 2 stack and not a single steady hand 2 stack, what we can do is we can use careful synthesis 3 now. We go to 25 durability. We know the next synthesis is going to finish the craft. And now if I use manipulation 2 and then steady hand 2, not a single stack is wasted. That's why I do things in this order. So now we're gonna use manipulation 2. Now if you would get a proc here, you could eat it go to 30 durability, use Steady Hand 2, go to 35 durability, and still not a single Manipulation 2 proc is wasted. You can just start Prudent Touching and not waste procs. That's very important when you're running out of CP so fast. So now comes the Steady Hand. Now we're going to Prudent Touch. Here what I like to do is, my objective is to go to 11 Inner Quiet stacks obviously. However, if I don't get as many procs as I did in this demonstration, you will have to use Hasty Touches more than I do now, since you would be running out of CP. This rotation, the finisher, costs 138 CP. That includes this last synthesis, which means you have to go to 11 Inner Quiet stacks beforehand, or as high as you possibly can, if you know you do not have enough CP left for another Prudent Touch, but you do have the durability for a Hasty Touch. Just do that instead. So what I'm paying attention to now is that I have enough CP to use more Prudent Touches. I have... Well, that was actually kind of embarrassing. I actually wasted a Manipulation 2 stack. This is the first time it has ever happened to me. That's because I got a proc right as I wanted to use Steady Hand. So I used Tricks of Trade to eat it, and then Steady Hand, and that wasted a proc. This is the first time it happened to me. However, this will only happen to you if you are very, very lucky. So usually, in 99.999% of all cases, this will not happen to you. And I don't mind this happening, because the reason it happened is because I got lucky. I don't need the last durability stack in this one case. So, we can use Prudent Touches now. Still, we do have the CP left over. Obviously, don't forget, we need 138 to actually do the finisher. That includes the Steady Hand, that includes the synthesis, that includes all those 4 skills. Now, if you had like 1 proc less, or even 2 procs less, at this point you would either say, okay, I'm finished, I do not have enough CP to cast anything anymore, or you would say, well, I have 5 CP left, but that's not enough for Prudent Touch, so that's why you would use Hasty Touch 2 here. Obviously, very important, pay attention to your durability. You need 15 for the finisher, which means I actually have enough to use a Hasty Touch 2 here, if I had to. However, I got so insanely lucky that I actually lost the Manipulation 2 stack, so I don't need to do that here. But I'm explaining everything you need to know, so you can do the rotation in with any kind of luck you get. So now I'm going to use Prudent Touch because I can. I don't need anything else. Obviously, the finisher is going to hit so hard that this will go to 100%. Actually, a lot more than that. That is obviously a case when you get lucky. Usually, at step 41, you got like maybe 2 procs, maybe 3 on average, somewhere on that, somewhere between 2 and 3 procs. That is enough with my rotation here to go to, let's say, above 90% high quality chance if all Hasty Touch 2s actually hit. So now we're in the finisher. That's the last phase of my rotation. That hits for almost 13,000. And now we use Careful Synthesis 3 to finish it off. Good. That was the demonstration of how I craft durability 35 items that are 3-star as of patch 4.2. Now, there is a third type of craft that is still very relevant as of right now. The third type of craft, beyond the item level 350 pieces, are the crafter and gatherer gear that is item level 320, like for example the one I'm using right now. These items still sell like hot pancakes, and I'm going to show you how to craft those. Now, what's the difference between the item level 350 items and those? Well, let me show you. For example, the chest piece has 6,377 difficulty. Everyone who loves using Maker's Mark is having a boner right now. You can be assured that's what I had when I saw this number. It also has 70 durability. That's alright. And you have to go to 28,500 quality. Let us compare that to those items here. That's actually more quality you need than for the item level 350 gear. You need more quality, but they are also easier to craft because of the higher difficulty. More difficulty actually makes the craft easier. The higher the quality and the lower the difficulty, the more difficult the craft actually becomes with this rotation. So, let me show you how to craft one of those pieces. For example, let me show you something relevant, something expensive, something that will demonstrate how confident I am in my rotation. Let's just go with the Code of Gathering. Why not? I'm actually not sure if they're selling, how many are on the market board, but this is for demonstration purposes only. I have someone else to take it off my hands in case I don't actually need to sell it. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to prepare all the ingredients you actually need, and then I will see you guys again. Alright, here we are. I have prepared the ingredients, and as you can see, only half of them, actually less than half of them, have to be high quality. Let me show you. If we use those, we have 7,141 quality going in, and this is enough if you're not extremely unlucky. This will be more than enough. What do I mean by extremely unlucky? I mean 0 procs, no stroke of genius, and on top of that you also have to fuck up the rotation somehow. Then you're going to fail. However, with my control stats, with this much quality going in, there is 0% chance that I'm gonna fail it. However, the rotation looks a tiny bit different because of the higher difficulty rating and the much higher quality requirement. So let me show you this rotation. We start the same way as always. Maker's Mark, Comfort Zone, Inner Quiet. Obviously pay attention to procs happening, like right now for example. Now this is 70 durability craft, we don't need manipulation 2 almost immediately. Here we're going to use piece by pieces. Now we actually also only need 3 piece by pieces here, just like in the 3600 difficulty crafts. This is actually enough. I've learned by doing in this case. In the end, 1 careful synthesis will be enough to finish the craft, unless you get insanely unlucky with synthesis. I've not gotten that unlucky in over 60 crafts yet. It's not impossible, but you will have enough durability to do careful synthesis twice in the end. Now, what makes this craft actually different from the 3600 difficulty craft that I just showed you earlier? Well, not only do we have a lot more flawless synthesis we have to go through, as you can see here, I have 55 Microsmart procs left, stacks left. We actually need so much quality that we have to use prudent touches, even though we already are at 11 in our quiet stacks. We will need more. It will be important that you remember that you know how much your finisher hits for. So let me show you. We're just going to do this over 50 times, and this is probably the reason people like Eshi10 do not use Maker's Mark, or as little as they possibly can, even though it is the more efficient ability, because it makes the craft twice as long and more tedious. However, I personally see, in my personal opinion, is that I have no problem doing a craft twice as long. I use Maker's Mark gladly if it means using less high quality ingredients. Obviously, don't forget your manipulation too, which I did because I was talking, but it doesn't matter as long as you use manipulation 2 before Maker's Mark runs out. When manipulation 2 will be done before Maker's Mark runs out, as long as that's the case, it makes no difference whatsoever. The flawless synthesis, obviously, when done 50 times in a row, gives an absolutely absurd amount of durability, of progress, almost for free. One of the perks of actually using this ability, which enables you to use piece by piece, instead of, for example, muscle memory, and then on top of that use flawless synthesis. A very, very powerful ability. I'm a huge fan of it, and I suspect this ability is the sole reason why the newest crafts have the exact same difficulty rating as the previous ones. For example, the item level 320 gear has a difficulty of 3600, and the new ones, the item level 350 gear, also has one of 3600. And I suspect this ability is the sole reason why more difficulty actually makes the craft easier, and they didn't want that to be too easy, too powerful, too more powerful than it already is compared to the other openers. It is absolutely absurd just how much progress I'm getting for what is basically an investment of 20 CP. Well, actually less, because Comfort Zone is ticking away inside of it, but basically 20 CP. It's fair to say that. Good God. It's so much progress. Woo! It's getting a little hot in here. Okay, so I know how much my Careful Synthesis 3 is going to hit for, and this will be enough. Even with 1500 craftsmanship, this will be enough. Now, in case you get unlucky and you fail like 5 syntheses more than I did, I'm talking about a flawless synthesis, of course, then you will need a second Careful Synthesis to finish. Adjust your rotation for that eventuality. Now, we have so much CP left because we recharged a lot of it that we have the option to use manipulation 2 again in case we run out of durability while trying to get the necessary quality level. However, right now you don't have to do that. You can decide on that later. So I'm gonna use Steady Hand and do Prudent Touches. Now I have the option to use Comfort Zone, obviously not inside of Steady Hand. I don't want to use to lose Steady Hand procs, even a single one. But I cannot guarantee that the craft will last for another 10 steps, which is why I'm not gonna use Comfort Zone here anymore. let's see. So I know my finisher hits for way more than 13,000. I think it almost hits. It hits almost for 14,000. Obviously, you will hit for less. Let's assume that you will hit for 13,000. If you hit for 13,000, at this point you would need 3 more prudent touches. So you have the option. Do I need 2 careful citizens to finish the craft? And I need 3 more prudent touches after reaching an equality stacks of 11? Well, obviously, I will have to use a durability restoring ability. And most likely, you will have the CP for it. So, now I need... If my finisher hits for 13,000, I need somewhere around 3 more prudent touches after reaching 11 required stacks, so let's do that. That hits for exactly 1,000. Another one. So now I'm at this number plus 13k is still not enough. So I'm gonna hit prudent touch again. And now this number is definitely enough. Even if your finisher only hits for, let's say, 13,000, this is still enough to finish the craft. I have a lot of CP left. Let's just say I got unlucky or something happened, and I do need 1 more hit. That means I need to use a durability restoring action here. I don't need much durability. The cheapest durability restoring action will do. That means we don't need the most efficient one like Manipulation 2 is, we just need the cheapest one to use. In this case, I prefer to use, for example, where is it? The Manipulation 1, I believe that is a... Yes, that is a goldsmith skill. So if you have the spot for it, this would save you 8 CP here. If you don't, Mastersman 1 saves you 4 CP here. Let's just do that for demonstration purposes. Obviously, what I would personally do now, I would just do the finisher and the craft, that would be enough. However, I'm trying to demonstrate something. I'm trying to make a point. So I'm going to use Mastersman 1. I now have 45 durability. And now I can say, well, I can use Steady Hand now, do 1 more prudent touch, and now I can guarantee that even if my finisher hits for less than 13k, that I'm still going to 100%. I'm at 4 Steady Hand stacks, which is enough for the finisher. So let's do that. Obviously, always pay attention to your CP. Now, I cannot make use of this proc. Actually, it's an excellent proc, not a good one. Well, I got what people call insanely lucky. An excellent proc is actually better than Great Strides plus Innovation. So I could use a Byrogod's Blessing here. However, this is a demonstration. What you would do, you would use Byrogod's Blessing here. Excellent is better than Great Strides plus Innovation. It is worse than all 3 combined, but better than those 2. But for demonstration purposes, I'm going to use Great Strides Innovation Blessing here, instead of hitting for probably 40k. But that is completely overkill and wouldn't serve any purpose. So I'm gonna use Great Strides, gonna use Innovation, and now Byrogod's Blessing. And here you see me hit for almost 14,000. Obviously you will hit for about 1,000 less. But I did adjust for that. I did use more high quality ingredients. I did hit more prudent touches just to demonstrate how you would do the craft. Also, at this point you have 2 careful synthesis to go if you have less progress than I do, and you do have the durability for it and the CP for it. So obviously we have successfully finished the rotation. This is a high quality item, absolutely guaranteed. Very well. That showed off all that I wanted to show in this video. If you have any more questions, please put that down in the as a comment. And I guess I will see you next time. Thank you.